Hi, my name is Alireza Tusi. I'm one of the string teachers, and today I'm going to show you guys how to hold your violins and how to hold your bow. First, we're going to start by opening your case. Make sure when you grab your violin, you're grabbing it by the neck instead of these black picks that are called pegs that are inserted in the peg box. I'll go over the specific parts that are needed for you to know exactly how to hold your instrument. Again, violin is a very fragile instrument, so if you are, and as you guys can experience it, it's very lightweight. So if you are even a little bit harsh with it, both playing wise and taking care of it as far as handling it, holding it, there's a high chance that you may damage your violin. So make sure you have a very firm grip. Using your left hand, putting it the top body of the instruments and wrapping your fingers around the neck on top of the strings. So, as you know, you need two parts to play your instrument. One is the instrument itself, the other one is the bow. And you may think that holding the violin would be the most difficult part and perhaps the entire thing that would actually help you to play the instrument. In fact, the bow plays about 90% of the entire role of playing your violin. It's very, very challenging to hold your bow than it is to hold your violin. So we're going to start with how to hold your violin. There are two different ways to hold your instrument. One is without a shoulder rest, which I don't recommend for beginners. It would make it much easier for you guys to use a shoulder rest just to make sure that you have a very, very solid and steady grip on your instrument. After a while, after you learned how to control your instrument, then sure, you would, if that's easier for you, if you prefer, you would be able to take the shoulder rest off and play your instrument without your shoulders. And there are many, many different musicians, different violinists who prefer on using a shoulder rest and some don't. And there are some specific teachers who actually specialize on teaching instruments without a shoulder rest. So for now, I'm going to show you guys how to hold your instrument with a shoulder rest. Now, shoulder rests come in different shapes, different sizes, and different materials. This one that I have technically helps me. As you can see, there is a hook here pretty much. So this technically hooks right on my shoulder and it secures the instrument very well that it pretty much never moves on my shoulder. And that is what you want. If you have a shoulder rest that's not completely holding your instruments steady in the same exact location, specifically as you play on it, you may have to experiment with different type of shoulder rest as well as chin rests. So the chin rest has to technically fit the shape of your chin, and we all have different shapes, different sizes, as well as the shoulders. So that is very, very important actually, to be able to find a perfect set just for you that works for your own body, even custom make one. I had many of my friends who wrapped plastics and sponges around one shoulder rest that they made, and that setup worked the best for them. So to apply the shoulder rest, in this one in particular, you can see this is the top part where the curve is, right? In most basic shoulder rests, there is a thick part and a thin part. The thick part, which is a bigger part, goes on top. That's the top part of the shoulder rest. How to apply the shoulder rest? You would, again, remember the grip. You would have a fantastic grip, very, very hard grip on your instruments. And then you would hold it in front of you, sideways. Then you would grab the top part of your shoulder rest and apply it approximately on the highest part of your violin and just let it kind of hang there like this. Don't worry about the bottom part yet. Then you would slide in the bottom part until it feels pretty hard like this. Now, some people prefer to move their shoulder rest to the right a little bit to just adjust the angle of how the shoulder rest sits on their shoulder. Some prefer to move it to the left. Again, that's just something that you have to experiment with to see which position would fit the best with your shoulder. And this would be how you will hold your violin. Now, the end thing that you have at the end of your violin, this is called end pin. By the way, everything that I'm going to explain it's going to be applied for both violin and viola. It's exactly the same. So the end button, when you hold your violin, the end button should come again and sit against your neck. So you have to bring your violin all the way up until it hits your neck. Make sure you don't place it a little bit away your neck, so then you don't have to reach with your chin to place it on the chin rest. One of the most important things that I could mention is that playing any musical instruments, specifically the ones that are a little bit more difficult to hold, such as violins, you really have to have a very natural posture, right? So imagine the violin itself is an extension of your body, as it is another thing that you have to adjust to it. You don't have to adjust your body to the instrument, but you could adjust the instrument on your body to the point that your back would still remain straight. You don't tilt or turn your neck too hard or do anything that would cause tension. Even the slightest tension would lead to something very bad. Not to mention that you wouldn't literally be able to play your instrument after 5 minutes. So what we want to do is to avoid all that. So again, make sure the shoulder rest, it's ironic to mention that, but it's called shoulder rest, not chest rest. I've seen many people put their shoulder rest on their chests like this, and then like kind of just do this. This is absolutely wrong. And again, there are different styles. If you play fantastically like this, by all means, you're fine. But again, for beginners who just start to learn, there is standards and there is a specific definition of how to do specifically on different spots on your instrument, how to hold it, where to place it on your shoulder. So make sure the curve on your shoulder rest goes right here on your shoulder, up your shoulder, where the collarbone is, pretty much right here. And again, as far as how far in your instrument needs to be, you have to bring it all the way close to your neck until the end button is touching your neck. Of course, after that point, don't press any harder than that, it would hurt you. So just keep it close and right here. After this is done, all you have to do left, you have to just turn your head, depending on again what type of chin rest you have. Some chin rests are placed here on top, some in the middle, and some a little bit lower even. So then you just turn your head and place it down. See how natural that looks? That's it. And I could hold my instrument hands-free. I could walk, even run with it. I've never tried it, you shouldn't either, but the instrument is very stable, like that. Now, as far as how much you have to actually tilt your instrument, you don't want it to be flat, parallel to the floor like this, and you don't want it to be like this either. You want it to be in a way that when you play on the G string, which is the highest string, that sounds the lowest notes on violin, when you place your bow on it, your bow would approximately be parallel to the floor, like this. If it's high up here, you have to stretch your right hand up too much, and that itself is creating so much tension on your shoulders. And when it's all the way down here, G may be fine, but then for E, you have to go too much down. So that's unnatural. Again, any musical instruments, specifically violins, you have to really make sure that you're playing your instruments in the most natural way possible. It's very difficult as it is, and there are many things that's going to require you to even do minor adjustments. So when you start with, you really have to make sure you're having the most natural position. So again, make sure your violin is all the way up with a normal tilt like this and like that, right? Now, the other thing that you have to look for is how far in you have to hold your instruments compared to your body. Let's say this is the center line of your body. How far in the instrument should be? Some people, again, hold it way closer to their center line and they play like that. Some people hold it way further away from the center line of their body. There are some ways that you could manage to play when it's closer to your center line, but not like this at all. And again, I would suggest about 45-degree, right in the middle. It's from your center line and all the way across your shoulder line, right in the middle. Another way to measure that is, imagine you're just walking normally, again, natural. And if you were to just raise your left hand up in the most natural way as you walk, as you're swinging your arms by your side, if you were to raise your left hand up and just hold it in a normal position as if you're holding your violin, you would never do this naturally or this, right? So the most natural way would be the correct way to hold your violin or viola. Right? Violas are more difficult because it's heavier, it's larger, it's tougher to deal with, but essentially it would be the exact same thing. And of course, with the help of chin rest and good shoulder rest, you would be able to hold it no problem. So again, make sure you're raising your left hand up normally and just hold it there, see? And then you would technically place your violin in that position, see? And then, of course, you have to bring it closer to you, to let it. And this would be the most natural way to hold your instrument. As far as your left hand goes, people who don't use shoulder rest, they have to use the support of their thumb more to hold the neck of their instruments. With a good shoulder rest, in fact, you don't need any support from your thumb. As I said, you could play your instrument hands-free, and that helps a lot with vibrato and with shifts. When you go up and down your instrument, you would be able to move it freely without having to hold the instruments down and move, and that makes it to be not smooth at all. And as a result, you wouldn't be able to land on correct notes for my more advanced students. So again, make sure you hold your violin in the most natural way. One of the most important thing about your left hand is your wrist. You have to remember that you keep your wrist straight all the time, always. Some people hold it like that, some people hold it like this. Even the slightest bend is harmful. And some people not only bend their wrist, but also they tilt it sideways. See? So sideways and bent. Again, none of these shapes are natural. You don't walk like this, right? You don't walk like that. How you walk is just natural, normal position that your wrist stays always straight. And again, the more naturalness you try to bring to your instrument, the better and easier you play it and the better it sounds. So make sure your wrist stays straight as you play. Then all you have to do is to technically face curl all your fingers, make sure your fingers are nice and round. The tip of your fingers is the contact point to the violin, right? Strings. So make sure you turn your hand a little bit so the audience would see the back of your hand, and the tip of all your fingers will technically be ready on top of the strings. That's all you have to do. And again, make sure it's very relaxed. You don't have to squeeze the neck too hard. It's a very lightweight instrument. You have to just have a very firm grip and natural, normal position.